New tonight, President Trump announcing a brand new head of the World Bank. From the Roosevelt Room of the White House, the Treasury Department's David Malpass is the president's choice to lead the International Finance Agency, which provides loans to countries all around the world for projects like infrastructure. So in other words, if Venezuela can manage to rid itself of its dictatorship, people like this gentleman here, David Malpass, will be there to help put the country back together again. Mr. Malpass, he joins me right now in an exclusive interview here on Trish Regan Primetime, his first interview since being named to the World Bank. So let me be the first to congratulate you. David, that's great news.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm pleased. I'm honored. I have to say, you know, there is a process. So what the president did was nominate me as the U.S. candidate for it. And so I'll be meeting with other shareholders, talking about the goals of the World Bank. And so that's the process we'll go through. And then
you got to get confirmed.
If I'm selected by the shareholders of the World Bank, then I would become president. And what we can do, I think, is focus the mission, have a core mission that really is to see countries doing better, countries growing, raising their median income. And that comes back to the U.S. That's good for us. It helps in terms of stability, in terms of peace, if countries can be doing better.
Sure. I mean, and we've seen that, and we'll get to Venezuela in a second, but we're seeing that play out, 900 miles south of our border there in Venezuela. It's important that that country do better. It's important that that whole region do better, because as we look at these caravans, and it's one after another coming to our border, our southern border, if those people had better economic opportunities, hey, maybe they wouldn't be so interested in coming here, right? So there's a lot of implications. But let me ask you about this, because this is an administration that really has prided itself on, not butting in places where they're not needed. And the thinking is we don't want to risk too much in terms of American lives and American dollars unless we absolutely have to. And if we absolutely have to, then we want to be in a position where we see success. So how does the World Bank factor into that, in that you don't want to be necessarily dabbling in everything all around the world?
That's right. But these are very complicated problems, and what I think we want to do is engage with other shareholders within the World Bank, also with other players that are looking to actually try to find a better course for countries, and then working with the countries themselves, trying to get a better course forward in terms of growth policies that we know work. And this is something that I've worked on both at Treasury and in
your private life as well. I mean, this has been your career.
I've been working on ways to see countries grow faster, whether that's the U.S., whether that's foreign countries. I'm happy to see us growing now, and the world sees it, that the U.S. is doing better. And so I think there's also a receptivity to the idea that if we have better programs, maybe we can grow faster. I think that's worth everyone trying to get together and find a way forward.
And can we use our influence in positive ways? So in other words, when you look at what's going on in Venezuela, at some point, Nicolas Maduro will take the hint. He will go. You will be left with a new government, hopefully democratic elections, et cetera, and a new opportunity. But they're going to need a lot of financing. Is that where you guys come in?
So some of that will come from the multilateral development banks, but the majority, I hope, will come from the future growth of Venezuela. They have huge oil resources, and so one of the challenges for private sector capital is to recognize that there's a future opportunity, bring the money now, and help the country actually begin to grow through the private sector. Now, the IMF, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank will be very involved. USAID, the bilateral aid programs, can do some, but the big source of funding is the future growth of Venezuela. That's what we really want to see.
Private markets, of course. Right. So that brings me to my next question. We have sanctions in place right now on Venezuela, and there are some investors, American investors, that are getting a little nervous because they're saying, wait a second, American investors are not allowed to sell these debt instruments, without getting too wonky on people, but these debt instruments to other Americans. And they're fearful that you're going to get the likes of the Russians and the Chinese and bad actors coming along because of these sanctions that have been put in place, and they're going to be scooping up assets in Venezuela on the cheap. So effectively vulture funds coming in. Could that happen?
I'm not running the sanctions policy, but I will tell you the way it works is Americans who happen to hold Venezuelan debt, and so that's going to be a very narrow group of pretty sophisticated investors. They are able to either hold that debt or able to sell it to a foreigner, and so I'm not so worried about this being a harmful situation.
Did they sell it to a Russian?
Oftentimes they're going to be selling to a European or to a U.S. entity that's set up abroad. Again, this is getting into beyond.
This is wonky. You know, it's
scope.
8 o'clock at night, right? we can't get too layered in this stuff.
But the goal of this is to have a situation where money doesn't go back to the Maduro regime. Right. That's really important, and I think that's the way the sanctions are set up. And in the future, what we're going to see, I hope, is that there's money available to the new government of Venezuela as it sets up a free government that can actually help grow the economy, stop the terrorism funding that I gather Secretary Pompeo was just describing. Well,
that's a big concern, and I've covered Latin America throughout my career, and there are pockets of problems, shall we say, down there. One in the tri-border region, the other being Venezuela in terms of Hezbollah and their activity. Big sources of funding for Hezbollah, like the biggest source outside of Iran, basically. So is that another area where you can come in as the World Bank and have some influence to try and, you know, make things a little bit better for everyone?
Yes, absolutely. But this is 8 o'clock at night, and boy, are you going very fast into these tough issues. And so corruption is a big challenge especially in poor countries, in developing countries. I think the World Bank can have a big positive impact on that. Another area that it can help is having women more involved in economies. We find that when that happens, the economy works better, it grows faster, and often it's more stable than when they're not.
I love hearing that. I love it, and I know that Ivanka Trump is working very hard on that and has a new initiative. In fact, I spoke with Secretary Pompeo about that, and we're going to show viewers that coming up. But yes, women have that's the ticket, right? If you can get to the women of the world, I think you can reach a lot of people and have a big influence.
Huge positive force, and it's something the U.S. can be very involved in, and also the World Bank can be involved in. I've been very involved with the WeFi initiative, which is a trust fund within the World Bank. And I think it can help Ivanka Trump's initiative, or it's really a framework that she's creating that will work in lots of different institutions.
That's great. That's great. Well, David, I wish you all the luck. Thank you, sir. As I said on Twitter, I said this is a man of intellect and this is a man of character. And that's what we need.
Thanks. Super. We can grow more.
Thank you.